introduces the Law Matters. Of course it does. Welcome once again. My name is Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator. As we tell you, this long-running program continues to provide legal information, practical assistance, legal examples, insights, all to help you with the law matters because the law matters. A better understanding of the law puts you in a better position to decide how to protect yourself, your family, and at times your business. As we present various topics, we're aware that you may be able to handle some issues yourselves. We're, of course, very happy to help you in that way. And if you aren't, if you decide to select an outside professional, our goal here is to help you be as prepared as possible, to save you time, money, and of course to achieve the best possible results. Again, as always, we want to welcome and thank Attorney David Bazar from the Bazar & Associates law firm in East Providence, who continues to give us legal information and insights on the topics that we present. It's that time of year. Every year around this time of year, we discuss some of the too many holiday scams. How to prepare, how to be proactive, how to protect yourself, what do you do if you are victimized. We're going to cover that today. There's very good reason to pay attention. A quick note, according to the Federal Trade Commission this year already, they've seen more than 200,000 online shopping scam complaints, a total loss of more than $270 million. As of this taping, Black Friday has already happened, but most of those have come as a result of fake websites and various scams with social media, especially those who have campaigns that impersonate some of the major brands, and you know what we're speaking of. It's absolutely the season to provide grift for the grifters. That shopping rush, that crush, big sales, charity appeals included. There are just so many people who are out there ready to do bad things. Those bad actors make it difficult and very costly to everyone. So while you wouldn't be surprised to know that the AARP has a fraud network that's trying to help people avoid troubles, AARP meaning for people who are 55 plus. In fact, it's not just AARP, which targets the 55 plus, but even 18 to 24-year-olds who spend much time online. So we're looking at a gamut of people, wide demographic range, all being scammed. So, okay, David, as of this taping, the FBI says the two most prevalent holiday shopping scams are non-delivery and non-payment crimes. So the non-delivery, a buyer pays for goods they find online, and they are never received. And then the other side, the non-payment scams, involves goods, services, whatever has been shipped and the seller's never paid. There's so much of this. What do you say about either one of those? So the non-delivery, you ordered it, you might have gotten an indication from email that it's coming, but it doesn't.
So what we always say is when you're buying something online, which is the majority, I see people moving more and more towards doing it that way. First of all, make sure that you're the one who goes to the website rather than responding through an email for an offer, a Black Friday offer or whatever it was. Click here and you click in. Probably most times it is probably from those stores or retailers that it's purported to be, but sometimes it may not be. And the only way you can be sure, I believe, is if you put in the website yourself and make sure you click through to that site. The second thing I would advise is when you're paying, make sure you pay for things with a credit card that you're able to then dispute and have the charges reversed if, as you said, it's not through a legitimate retail operation online and you didn't receive what you said you were going, what you bought, and was never delivered, so that you can say, hey, this wasn't legit, it wasn't shipped, please reverse the charges.
How many times you always say, go to that website first? Yet, in this time, there are so many outbound emails that are coming to your email that looks so much like the real thing, or say they are the real thing. You don't know. What should you do if you see, today you're going to get 35% off, 40% off? how do you then carry through and go to that website still getting that promotional code that's tied to that email? If you go to that website directly, you may not find that. What would you do?
So I think there's a couple of different things you can do. One thing you could do is to go to the website directly yourself and see if you're able to find a place to put in the promotional code, which you can go back to your email and cut and paste perhaps. And if there's not a place to put it in and you really are dead set on making sure that you get that, if it is legit, you could click through and compare the two sites and make sure it's exactly the same. And I would check the address that you're clicked into to make sure it matches up with the address that's in the address box when you go through and put it in yourself.
And I'm not sure if you're specifically referring to this, but as we've said often, one of the things that you can check on that email or that website is it might be not Amazon.com necessarily, but Amazon 65, 42, dead giveaways that it's not correct.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
And so go to that website. And another thing that you mentioned, and I don't know if we'll have time to cover it later, but so many people are using other cash apps. And there's news in the paper these days and in online sites that say the Zells and some of the Venmos, they have some problems. One thing that actually I didn't know about, and I just learned in preparing for this, is that you referred to using the credit card, and that's valuable. You can go back and speak to your credit card company. There's protection. Those protections are not the same with those Zells and Venmos. They don't offer the same protection. So there's certainly another level of security in this high-risk time.
And debit cards, which is directly tied to your bank account, is much more difficult to reverse a charge that's fraudulent or for delivery that was never made. So that's why, even though I personally don't like to use credit cards, and we're going to do our segment at some point in time on debt and consumer debt and credit cards, I don't like to, but if I'm buying something online, I will use a credit card, and then my advice is, and then pay it off right away when it becomes due.
That's another important tip. So apparently, just in the first, I guess it was the first 10 days of November, 1 out of 6 were malicious emails, and they had everything to do with this shipping issue. You know you bought something, and it's going to be shipped to you. Logically, you might expect UPS, FedEx, or whatever the other is to send you a notice of confirmation, or whatever this is, your notice of confirmation. You'd very likely want to click on that, but it may or may not be UPS or FedEx. It could have been a phishing or a scam site in and of itself. There's a problem with your delivery. Click here right away. If you already knew that you bought something, that temptation level to think that it's legit increases exponentially, David.
It does. And so oftentimes you could live in a family with a spouse and older children who might be buying things, and I receive emails, and I won't click on them because I know I didn't buy anything. But I'll then go to my wife and say, did you buy something? And then my daughter, who lives with us, did you buy something? And if they did, I still won't click on it, but I'll say, well, there is an issue, call. I always like to call. It's much harder to click on, it's much easier to click on something and have something go bad than if you call directly and say, hey, what's going on with my shipment? Can you tell me what's going on? I know that can be aggravating because you could be on hold for a while, but probably safer.
And if you couldn't do that, theoretically, when you bought the item, there might be an instantly generated tracking or shipment confirmation code. So you, after seeing an email that said, you have troubles, David, rather than you clicking on that email, if you knew it was being sent by UPS or FedEx, you could go to that site, enter that proactively, enter that tracking code, and find out if there was
exactly. Just like we talked about taking your promotional code and putting it in. Go to UPS if it's UPS or FedEx and take the shipping confirmation number, and you can plug it in on their website and find out.
And of course, since it's holiday shopping time, everybody looks forward to the discounts, deep discounts, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, or whatever else. But all during this season, there are so many discounted designer toys, games, handbags, whatever. It's definitely going to be a Gucci, What do you say about that when you see that there looks like it's a business that maybe you just don't know, hadn't really been familiar with, but they are known, or they're positioning themselves as being a great source for discounted, high-end, brand name items? What do you do?
Do you think this is the online version of going to New York City and having the people on the street corner with the blanket down with all of the bags or watches or whatever? Yeah, would you like to buy this Rolex?
It's only $15.
Yeah, $50. Yeah.
So what would you do?
I would be pretty sure that it wasn't a Rolex. And if I didn't mind that and I wanted to buy a $50 watch, then I might buy it. But don't go and expect the deal that's too good to be true to be true.
Yes, and if it were a new company, and there are many that crop up all the time that might be just not brick and mortar stores, but online businesses, if you didn't recognize the name of that business, you could do something else proactively, namely take that company name, put it in the browser, and put either reviews or scams or trouble or problems, and it might be very interesting what you find in that first click. Again, proactively checking it out rather than being victimized after you've gone to the site, which was not legit.
It's not a direct example, but lawyers oftentimes receive emails from people saying, help, I need legal services. Do you do escrow for purchase and sales agreements? And what they seem to do is they want you to say yes and then give them your account number, so they said they're going to wire money in and somehow the money gets wired out or things of that nature. So we're always very careful as lawyers not to just agree that that's something we do and we can help you with. So to your point is we get an email from a fellow who says, I have this company. I sent a shipment to a company in East Providence. They didn't pay me. Can you help me with the collection? So the first thing we do is we, as you say, Google or look up his company, the other company. Is it legit? Do the names match up? And even then, when the names match up, we won't reply directly to the email. We'll get the telephone number that comes up online and call it and ask them if they sent us the email first.
Good to know. Another interesting tip or trip, knowing that people are online and doing shopping, and there are often photos, an array of photos of a product that someone is trying to sell. Many do know this, but if you take that image and you upload that to Google, Google can do what they call a reverse image search, and you could very easily, at many times, very often be able to find out that even that image was lifted. It showed up someplace else, even that was pirated, which would certainly give you a tip that this was not a legitimate company.
So are you saying you Google the image?
So if you take the image, you can upload the image to Google Lens and do a reverse image search, and it can tell you often where it comes from, or more importantly, where it didn't come from, which would be a good tip to let you know that that company is probably not all that it claims to be. So when people are thinking about buying for someone else, they also think about doing gift cards. Gee, he's older now, I don't know what to do. What's the best way to buy a gift card and not be scammed?
So we always have the issue of the gift cards, and they're in the store, and you have to take a really good look at the gift card and make sure that, first of all, there's usually a little section that needs to get scratched off to get the correct code, make sure that that's intact. And oftentimes now the cashiers are, if you're buying it in a store, are pretty sophisticated with being able to tell you if there's an issue or not.
So I think when we had talked about it before, there were times when we would say that at a department store or some other store, someone might have gone to the rack, taken it out, manipulated it so that by the time you buy it, they, not you or the person you intended it for, gets the $50, $100. So it's hard to deal with that. In many cases, this might be another good reason to do it online, where you're going directly to the merchant and being able to get that gift card so that you know it didn't go through anyone else's hands or hasn't been touched by anyone else.
And oftentimes, if I do go to a store, I'll ask the cashier if they have any behind the counter, so to speak. So I know it hasn't been out front and no one else has been able to touch it.
If you do buy a card and you put $50 on it, isn't there also a way that you can register it, check to make sure that there really is that balance, and you'd find out right away whether or not somebody had tampered with it?
Most cards you're able to go to a site, again, whatever, a website or a number sometimes even to check balances.
And we hear of the stories later about how many people who were on the receiving end of the gift card and find that their Auntie Tilly didn't give me $50, there's actually nothing there. And that's already been a situation where someone's likely had their hands on it and been able to manipulate it.
And remember this too, gift cards, gift certificates aren't supposed to expire.
And what do you do if your merchant, when you want to redeem it, says, sorry? What do you do? What's your recourse?
Is it sorry because they're saying it expired, or is it sorry because they're saying somebody else already used it?
Well, suppose they say, sorry, it's expired. You said it's not supposed to expire ever.
No, gift cards don't expire, so you have to honor it.
The gift card would have the dollar value, not 50% off on something, right? Because they could say that 50% no longer is available. Is that true?
That's possible. So if they're selling an item, it's just like cash that you're paying for it, or a credit card you're paying for it. If you went in to buy something that said 50% off and the sale expired, it's terminated, it's over, then just because you have a gift card doesn't give you a right to try to enforce the terms of a sale that are no longer valid. However, bear in mind that you can match up what's been advertised, and once it's been advertised, that's an offer for a contract, so to speak, and you're going in to accept it as an acceptance, so that if they offered a sale or a term, and it doesn't, you have to look and see, is there a, by next Tuesday or December 31st, what are the terms of the offer that they've put out there?
Good to know. And also, in the spirit of giving, which many are in this time of the season, people want to give to charities, and that's legitimate, but also it's yet another opportunity for scams, phishing schemes, etc. You know you've given to this charity before. When this charity sends you an email, you might be saying, oh, I remember I gave, oh, they're right, I did give money last year. Again, is it just another opportunity that you should go to that charity yourself versus saying, okay, I'll click here now because it was just Giving Tuesday? Was that legitimate? Was that not? How would you know?
Right. I prefer to go to my charity of choice directly to make my gift. Or I'm an old-fashioned fellow, actually. I like to write a check and mail it in to whomever it needs to go to.
Sounds right. But there, of course, we just come off of the Giving Tuesday and so many emails when I think that mailbox was were ready to crash from those solicitations alone. And, of course, many people use their phones to do business now. There are many phones that have apps that will say, we can make this much easier for you. However, once you click on that, while it seems that that app may or may not be working to perform the function that you thought it was, by the time you put your codes in or start a password, it could have also been suspicious, and it could have been a problem, and it could have taken your personal information right off that phone, which is terrible.
Those phones, which are little handheld computers, which can do so many good things, can do a lot of bad things too. And I was actually talking to someone today who said, it's a phone. I use it to call people, and I use it to count my steps. I don't want it to save all my pictures. I don't want to pay extra money for storage to save all of the information. I just want to use it to make my phone calls.
Yes. I guess on that note, though, a special note to parents, many kids love to game. The gaming apps that are offered as free, or here's the newest, latest, and greatest, those are often the ones that have some built-in malware, which, if downloaded to play the game, also plays other games that you don't want to play. So on the other side of it, we're giving people some ideas about what to be aware of. What do you do if you really were victimized? It happened. Now what?
So victimized by
online, say.
A business that's online. The first thing, of course, if it's a legitimate business, is to try to deal with somebody there to straighten it out. If you've been victimized by somebody who's a legitimate business that didn't ship something, and you paid by credit card, of course, the first thing to do is stop by disputing the charge. The next thing is, if it's not legitimate, it's time to maybe call the Better Business Bureau or the Attorney General Consumer Hotline or something of that nature, so that somebody can look into what's going on. You may not be the only person.
And what should you do relative to your bank? If you sent a check to pay for something, would you stop payment on it?
If you can.
If you can.
Right. Now, again, remember, if you receive the item that you bought and stop payment before it's cashed, that can be a problem for you, because now you're sort of in the situation where you've given a bad check and if you received the goods, you can't do that. But if you didn't receive anything or didn't receive what you bargained for, and you can do that, you stop payment. But again, most people don't send a check and then get the item. They pay by credit card, hopefully.
And that credit card, you still say, is the best line of defense while people are shopping?
I think so.
Better than a debit card?
Better than a debit card and better than your other alternative forms of payment.
Also, you mentioned calling the Better Business Bureau or
the Attorney General's office.
AG.
Consumer.
Also, there is a listing that says the IC3, www.ic3.gov, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaints Center. So I guess that would pertain more to maybe the extent of, well, it's not supposed to be the total dollar loss, but if it really seems like it's a significant and a bigger operation, you might want to
if it happened
the FBI.
online, then it falls under the jurisdiction of that division of the FBI, apparently. So if you have a problem that was created by an online retailer or somebody who you dealt with online, then certainly that's the place I would start.
So when you mentioned calling your credit card company, as that might be the first line of defense, you always say, make sure you have documentation. Many of these transactions are done online, so you'd have an email that they might want or a copy of it. If you bought something, what other kinds of documentation would you think that they might have?
So when you buy something from someone online, usually it's, if I recall this correctly, you have your shopping cart and then you go through and you cash out online, and there's a receipt that you should print that says this is what I bought. Usually it'll have the shipping terms on there as well, and your address where it's being shipped. And so I would print all of those documents that show the transaction and what the promised shipping date was and all of that.
So that's good documentation. So speak to the idea that many people who are shopping and shopping online aren't just doing it in the comfort of their own home on their own secure Wi-Fi. Many people don't use VPNs, but that's another story. When they go to the coffee shop, the airports, the hotels, and here's your free password, you know that that's not very secure. Everyone should know that it's very likely not to be. I'm thinking you're not downloading client files in the middle of any area. Yes, exactly. So if someone buys something in an airport and uses that Wi-Fi, and there's obviously something that happens. Maybe they didn't make the transaction successfully. Maybe someone now has hacked their entire computer system, and what kind of recourse do they have? You can't go to the Logan and say, excuse me, I've been hacked here. How would you get to know? What should you do? Is that an FBI situation? Is that?
Yeah, it sounds like that would be another, do you want to repeat that website?
ic3.gov, www.ic3.gov, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaints Center.
Yeah, because that's what it was. It was an internet crime. And so that's where you want to start and go. And again, I know people are traveling and they're in an airport and they're, have time and they want to do that. You got to be careful.
Yes. Also, back to the idea of the charities. How do you know, we've talked about this briefly, how do you know when the charity that is unfamiliar to you is actually legitimate?
You can research it.
Have some thoughts about how you would do that?
Well, first and foremost, obviously, you can Google them and go online and look at their website and see if they are who they are. There are other places where you can go. I think you have some of those right there.
You bet. Charity Navigator, Charity Watch, and GuideStar is probably the one that most people go to. But there's one other thing that I had read somewhere, and I'm not sure about. the claim was that you can look for their EIN number, which is a business's
Tax ID number.
Tax ID number. Where would that show? Would that be on a GuideStar piece, David?
Well, it could be, but actually many of the nonprofits will list their tax ID number on their website.
Which would be a good sign that they are legitimate.
I would say so.
That would certainly bolster their credibility
Right.
a little bit. When someone is looking to make a donation and it's to a charitable site, do you have any sense that there's less risk in doing it, making an online contribution, PayPal or credit card? Actually, let's address that too. Is there less risk involved with applying or giving money through the charity directly?
Yeah, so again, now you want to make sure you're at the actual legitimate charitable website.
Yes, let's just take that for granted,
Once
yes.
you've established that, then it's a bit safer to do it with one of your payment options or a debit card, in the sense that you're not expecting to get anything back. You're just giving. And so it's not like you're likely to have to go and say, I want to reverse that charge or cancel that payment, because you gave it away, not expecting anything in return.
And you mentioned credit cards and their stability and safety. Is that true also of PayPal, which is connected to your bank?
Yeah, I'm not familiar exactly with what PayPal protection is provided to you when you've been scammed.
So I'm concerned about that too. We do know that all of the what they call peer-to-peer, you take me for coffee, I want to pay half,
Right.
Venmos, and those are the peer-to-peer as opposed to business transactions. So I
Correct.
guess fewer people are using those. People are also considering these days that there's talk about loan forgiveness. Here we are in the middle of a charitable season, and doesn't that sound just like a great idea? That's not happening right now. There's discussion about it, but apparently there are a lot of emails and solicitations about, here's all you need to do to have your loan forgiven, click here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be clicking anywhere right now, because apparently courts have put on hold whether or not that program is going to be allowed to go forward. And until you hear from the government that this is back on track, I'm not giving anyone any information.
Sounds right. And while we've been talking mostly about the online situation, we've also noted that robocalls are very commonplace, and if you give any information out, you're likely to have your own personal identity hacked.
Right.
And you have no recourse with that. Is that another issue where you'd have to go to the AG?
It just becomes, yes, because it's very difficult. There's not anything, once someone's stolen your identity and taken your information, you're at the mercy of whatever it is that you can hire somebody online, maybe, identity defender. I'm just making that up. But you report it to the state police. If it's by phone, perhaps it could even be federal, because we do have those wire laws. So, but yes, don't give your information out.
Good news, good information. We thank you for tuning into this session of the Law Matters. We hope that you aren't scammed, and we hope we've helped you have some new ideas or new things to think about. Pay attention, it really does matter. Pay attention to the law matters, it matters to you. Thank you.